Hello, my name is Andrew. Today I'm going to be discussing muted group theory. And the first thing I want to discuss about in muted group theory is its history or how it was made. It was originally created by Caris Camere. I'm probably murdering her last name, but it was made in 1974 when she conducted a study basically onto how cartoons portrayed women. And after that, it was talked about by Edwin Ardner. He was kind of the first one who proposed the idea of women as part of a muted group, and he did this in 1975. He kind of made this point through the um, idea that a lot of anthropologists and people who studied communication and other things weren't using women as direct references in their studies, so they were just the ideas and thoughts of women weren't being accurately portrayed in our society. So the next thing I want to talk about when I'm talking about muted group theory is what it actually is, like what does it entail. But the first thing that I have to discuss when talking about muted group theory is what actually a muted group is. Muted groups are people who belong to lower power groups. They have to kind of change their language when they communicate in public environments through work or something like that. And if they don't, then their ideas are normally pretty overlooked or ignored. Um, and it comes from places of lacks of power. So people who are impoverished or things like that are considered low on like a society totem pole. Um, Most of the time, if they speak freely, their ideas get ignored because of their lack in power and control. So people don't want to really listen to them, which kind of creates the whole idea of muted groups, of groups that just aren't being able to get their voices and opinions out there where people actually care and listen. And whenever muted groups is applied to women, it uses the idea that women perceive the world differently than men because of their experience, or at least that's the kind of assumption behind it. And we can kind of see uh, this in mainstream terminology and phrases like things like leveling the playing field or locker talk, like stuff we use that just seems very more male experiences in our society. A lot of our phrases are based off of experiences of males instead of how women uh, have lived in their experiences in our public kind of everyday conversations. But now I want to discuss some of the examples that we can see of muted group theory in real life. The first one, of course, would be Cramer's study. Um, um, Specifically, it's researched 37 cartoons, and it found that that out of those 37 cartoons, less than half of them had a female character in them, and out of all the ones that did have them, only 9 of these characters could speak. This was kind of a good showing of how women were not really portrayed to be important and stuff in society and had been muted in our mainstream medias. But we can also see this in like the power. We can also see this power difference in a muted group through name changes through marriage. Whenever like people get married, the man always normally keeps his last name. And if not, the man very rarely takes the woman's last name. They might just keep their own. This just kind of shows that the men have more power, and when it comes to relationships and stuff like that, their name is more important than what we consider like a woman's maiden name um, in our society. And the final example would be the idea of male stream expression, which is basically the idea that mainstream media is controlled by men, which it very much is. And we can kind of see that a lot of our news medias and things like that will push a lot of things that has more interest with men. They're using phrases that are more manly phrases or part of a masculine expression, and it doesn't really apply that much room for women in our media. Muted group theory does a great job explaining kind of how there is a dominant power group and not all values are shared equally and people get suppressed in society. But specifically Cramare's view of the muted group theory when applying it to women does have some critiques, even though it does do a great job of being a broad interpretive theory. The first one would be that men might not be purposely muting women, while it is happening and things like that. It could always just be something that, like, it's not on purpose. It's just kind of how the world has been, and people are unknowingly doing these things. The next critique is not all men are part of the dominant group. This kind of article describes it just as specifically men, but not like a category of men. But like there are men who do belong to these minority groups. We'll say like African Americans, immigrants and stuff in America, people like that who definitely get marginalized and pushed down and suppressed. And the final critique would be that there are statements in this article that support the idea that men are trying to control women and doing this all on purpose, but that honestly might not be the case. There isn't much that like kind of proved that during this theory. But yeah, other than that, the muted group theory does a great job of describing how people basically are suppressed by a dominant power in society, and it does a very good job of being a broad statement on that. And on that note, these are the references. Thank y'all for listening. Hope y'all have a good day.